What up? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On this podcast, we'd love to talk about crowdfunding and specifically how you can raise money for a new campaign, whether that's a Kickstarter campaign, Indiegogo campaign, and really how to bring a new product into this world, whether it's the marketing of it, whether it's actually how to get backers, how to get funding, how to get strangers out there supporting your crowdfunding campaign. We cover that and more on this show. And you can go back and you can look at the archives of this podcast. Got tons of interviews with successful campaign creators, really uncovering what actually worked for them when it comes to getting funding, when it comes to getting people to actually support their work, to spread the word, to get people to take a chance on them. I think that in today's episode as well, we're going to discover a ton when it comes to creating an entirely new product. So first of all, you're going to learn a lot about creating a new product. I think you're also going to learn a lot when it comes to actually getting funding. Today's guest actually was able to attract over $157,000 in funding on Indiegogo as well as Kickstarter. In addition, their current campaign is more than 282 backers when it comes to their current campaign, which is live on Indiegogo. We're going to go through a lot in this interview. First of all, I think also understanding what it is that you need to do if you want to do this full time. If you are an entrepreneur or a founder, or if you're a creator, some things that you should know about actually doing a crowdfunding campaign, what you should know about in terms of how to get the word out there. And like I said before, also creating something that's new, creating something that's unique. We're going to get into that and more in today's podcast episode. So I do hope that you take away a lot from today's episode. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've been putting out my podcast, I think, since 2015. I also have a great website out there called crowdcrux.com where I write blog articles. Also got a YouTube channel as well, the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel under my name, Salvador Briggman. I'm starting to break into Instagram as well under my same name, Salvador Briggman. So if you've been enjoying this podcast and you want to learn a little bit more when it comes to doing a crowdfunding campaign, specifically, you want to smash your goal on Kickstarter, on Indiegogo. You really want to, raise money. Not only that, but actually blow past this and raise more than you even thought. I have a great course out there. It's a free course, which you can learn more about Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and specifically how to get more funding on these platforms. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to the link I'm about to mention at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter, crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. In addition, I do help creators, beginning creators, and seasoned veterans with helping them through the process of setting up a campaign, raising money, attracting a crowd, doing marketing, you name it, all the things that go into a campaign that actually works, a campaign that actually gets backers, really getting something off the ground, but also surpassing your goal. So if that sounds something that's interesting to you, if you want to go in depth when it comes to a coaching session, if you really want to know what you got to do in order to be successful, get all of your questions answered, really helps to have a little bit of homework items as well from that, be introduced to resources, really everything that goes into a killer launch, you got to check out this link because this is where you can book a one-on-one coaching call with me. You can go to this link I'm about to mention at crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching will take you there, and you can learn more about coaching and provide a little bit of information there if you're interested in scheduling a session ASAP. That being said, let's jump right into this interview. Let's get right down to it and really discover how this creator was able to raise six figures with their Indiegogo campaign, attract a ton of backers, and the recommendations that they have for you. It's coming up right after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we're here with a guest who has not only done a successful Kickstarter campaign and attracted more than $150,000 in funding for the 4-in-1 filtration system for pure water in 7 minutes, but he also is now on Indiegogo in demand and continuing to raise funds. And so far, he's attracted more than 281 backers so far. We have the man himself on the podcast. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me over. Very excited to be here.
Definitely, man. What part of the world are you hailing in from?
We are located in Fort Myers, Florida.
Awesome. Actually, all the way down there in Miami, Florida. Cool, man. So, I was looking over your project, and I think what really stood out to me is just your mission, right? And this idea that you've created a product kind of around that. Maybe we can get started. You can just explain to listeners a little bit about what your product is and really what it does.
Yeah, so I have started in 2009, and at that time just started with a simple e-commerce store selling water filters online, and they were mainly reverse osmosis under sink water systems. During that time, everybody probably remembers 2009, 2010, very tough times. Needless to say, the business did not survive at that time or did not go as planned. But the lesson learned during that time was that people calling in and inquiring about the water systems is that not everybody had an ability to install a water system. For example, if you're renting or in a dormitory or you're in a college or you're in an old folks home, usually the options are very limited for the systems that need to be installed in those particular cases. So that's when the idea was born to come up with a water system that doesn't need to be installed, but still provides a very high quality, high purity water, just like an under sink reverse osmosis system would. And that's when we launched the first water system in partnership with a manufacturer from Taiwan. And that system is still up for sale and is still going. The U1, which is 4-in-1, is kind of the next step in that evolution. And it brings all the features that have been asked for through last decade or more that were missing in the original system. And that kind of covers, I would say, 99% of all the requests that we had with our existing system.
Well, why water?
Well, that also has a backstory to it, and I will cover it very quickly. So when I was just starting out, and we just recently moved to Florida, that was a few years after our move, started working, and right before the housing crash, also got fortunate enough to purchase a home. That house was on a private well where you get your own water supply from basically a well on your own property. There was some equipment outside the home that pre-treated the water coming into the house. And then for drinking water, it had a water system under the sink. Well, kind of got used to it and stopped buying bottled water for drinking water. And about a year later, I ended up selling that house and moved to a different home. And that home did not have a water system under the sink. So we were back to buying bottled water. And after a couple of weeks, I was kind of sitting there and thinking to myself, why? Why am I doing this? That other system was so nice. And that's how the journey began. So from that point on, that was just a lucky break, I guess.
So, with that, there are obviously other filter solutions out there, right? You can put on your sink or pour water into this massive jug, right? It gets filtered. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that those were insufficient? Why were you really so motivated to do something on your own, to bring something on your own to market?
All the other solutions up to that point, were not reverse osmosis. And why it's important to kind of stick to the reverse osmosis is because the type of the water quality that you get, nothing else out there comes close with cost, the amount of maintenance required, and the amount of environmental impact, and et cetera, et cetera. So the reverse osmosis is the best technology that we have today that gives you the water purity that nothing else that just even comes close. And it's very convenient, and it's the water quality is the best that you can have. When you look on some of the bottled water out there that's sold in stores, usually the higher end bottled water will say on the back of the sticker, it'll say something like purified by reverse osmosis with minerals added for taste. Major brands are all using that reverse osmosis quality water to start with, and then they're putting that into a bottle.
So the average person out there, the average person in Florida, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to have that thought and be like, man, I wish I had some filtered water. And they're going to go back to buying bottled water. But you actually decided to create something on your own, which is a huge step, I think, in any person's life. Had you created products before? Was this the first time you'd made one? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate. And from that experience, when we just first got started, I have partnered up with a manufacturer in Taiwan who has been very supportive and very accommodating to a young person that I was at that time. They worked with us and they kind of took some of the ideas and packaged it into a product. So it's not that, I would like to take all the credit, but it's been a journey to where I have gotten a lot of help. The U1 is built on top of that experience.
Okay. And in terms of your skill set, are you a designer? Are you a marketer? Are you a business person? How do you really view yourself?
That's a very good question. I think I am number one is probably business person or a entrepreneur that's looking to solve a certain problem in the world. Secondly, probably a little bit of a designer and a marketer. I don't know how to design things, or not that I don't know. I don't have the skill set, the natural born skill set to be able to create something and make it look good to where it's classy and et cetera, et cetera. However, I think over the years, I was able to develop a skill of knowing when something looks good. And that's probably the secondary.
Was this your first preneur, or have you had preneurs in the past? Like, have you started companies in the past?
Yes. So this is actually the water systems. It's a number two business that I've tried to develop, but total it's number three or second out of the three business ventures that I have put my time into. The very first one was a very small company where just me and my mom. I was only less than 21 years old. We're trying to start up a cleaning company that lasted for about a year. But then working with a family is always not easy. So that's kind of challenging. And that has folded. Correct.
So with this other company, you being an entrepreneur, right? And you deciding to take a risk, were you doing this full time? Did you have a job at the time? How was your life looking like when you really were starting back in 2009?
Yeah. So in 2009, I was working a job at the mine, operating heavy equipment. And that's where I learned a lot of technical skills. Maybe technical is not the right word, mechanical skills. Just being able to, recognize nuts and bolts and put different items together and learned a little bit of machining, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a very, very good experience. But then in 2009, recently got married at that time and had a baby on the way.
Yeah, that's a lot, man.
Looking back, it seems like it was a very risky move, but that's when I decided to leave my job and go into full-time into water systems.
Fast forwarding a tiny bit, you talked a little bit about what ended up happening in 2009, and then you decided to restart this, right? You decided to restart the venture. What really led to that decision? Because the first time it didn't seem like it worked out for you, but the second time you really sort of started to rethink it. Why do you feel like you came back to this?
Yeah, so actually the very first product, which is a countertop reverse osmosis, became available. It took a couple years to get developed based on the feedback that we've gotten in the beginning in 2009, 2010. So that's when it got developed 2 years later. And the business never shut down, but it wasn't the full-time venture. It kind of kept on going slowly but surely and picking up steam along the way. It took a few years.
What was your reaction to your wife or your family? They're like, this guy, doing his business again. Was it like that, or were people very supportive of you?
Looking back, probably I would say I took a lot of beating. It was very tough times. It's a combination of being young, also the economy, probably the worst that I've seen in my lifetime, and having a baby at the same time. It was very tough times. But the family will support you if they believe and see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But there's always been times like, hey, what are you doing? Why don't you just get a job?
Yeah. So you came out with the first version. It sounds like that started to get a little bit of traction here, right? And then you decided to consider doing a Kickstarter for like the second version, right? Since the time you came back.
That's correct.
Right? Okay.
Correct.
What did it feel like for you to really revisit the idea and start to see a little bit of success here?
It felt like it was long overdue.
Yeah.
Most of the time when people see from the outside looking in, they're like, oh, look at this. It's just blowing up all over the place. And it must be very successful. But if you really lift up the hood and you see all the blood, sweat, and tears and nights and days and weeks and years that it took to get to one point, I don't know if I would have known that it would take so long, I would probably still do it. And I don't think that it's well worth it for me. But I don't know if it's for everyone, because everybody is a little bit different.
Yeah, I don't think I would be that passionate about water, but you definitely are, right? Which is awesome, dude. And, we need people like you who are bringing new products into the world that actually do purify water and do it in a better way and an easy way.
That's correct. The convenience in these water systems is huge. It's not as convenient as having your own like installed under the sink, because simply you have to refill it once you used up the water that's been filtered. But beyond that, there's a lot of people that are still renting. There's a lot of people in colleges. There's a lot of people in living in conditions to where they would not be able to install a water system for one reason to another. And this is the best out there.
So tell me about what it was like preparing for your Kickstarter launch. Because you were fully funded, man, in like 3 hours. That's crazy. That's wild. What was the time like preparing for that campaign launch?
To be honest, the first 3 hours funded, I think it was maybe half or a little bit more than half was due to existing customers that we already had a relationship with. They had our product. They knew us. They liked us. They have in contact with us. We always take care of our customers, and they were ready for the next generation, because that's what the system is based on. It's all the feedback from our customers, and that's what's needed. So I think majority of that came from our existing customers, probably around half, maybe a little bit more than a half. And the rest of it, we did have a marketing partner that helped us with the pre-launch sequence. There was advertising going out, and also generating a buyer's list or future backers list for the campaign. So that also played a big role.
Very cool. Very cool. And when it came to that pre-launch list, were you just gathering emails? Were you having people reserve their interest in some way and paying a price for it? What did that look like?
Yeah, so the pre-launch sequence was majority emails. There was also a giveaway. And there was a mechanics in place to have people secure their pledge so they get the lowest price when it does launch by placing, I believe it was a $25 reservation fee.
Awesome. So cool. How long before you launched the campaign did you actually let your existing customers know about the product?
It was in the pre-launch sequence. So it was about a month before.
Okay, so you did about a month of a pre-launch. And you go live, you start getting funding. At a certain point, you get into the 6 digits range. What did that feel like for you, for someone who's been toiling nights and weeks since 2009 to really impact people's quality of water in their homes? What did that feel like to really see that kind of visible success?
It felt great. At the same time, it was a little bit below what our goals were, the campaign, but it was within the expected range. I understand that, it's probably we're within top 5-6% of all the campaigns out there with the amount of funding generated. However, I felt like we could have done better, or wished that we could have done better, simply because we already an established business and we had so much going for us as far as the pre-existing customers and the developed presence in the marketplace. So we're not some new guys on the block, so to say, but we already have an established business with lots and lots of customers. So with that in mind, maybe our goals were a little bit higher and we didn't reach those. However, the realistic expectations were right within that range. So it wasn't a huge disappointment, or it wasn't a huge exciting milestone, and it was within about the expected range for us.
Okay. Do you feel like there was anything you would have done differently to really get to those higher expectations which you had, or do you think that's just kind of the roll of the dice?
It probably was roll of the dice. One, I would say probably 80% of that was roll of the dice. What could have done? There's always, looking back, there's always things that you think about that could have been different. Probably listening to the podcast like this, getting experience from, or listening to the experience from other people that went through it, which I haven't done. And I believe that's probably was the biggest mistake on my end. Should have been a little bit more involved in listening to other people's experiences firsthand, like on podcasts, the articles, and et cetera, versus just bringing a marketing partner on board, which we did 6 months before the launch, just in preparation for the whole campaign, and relying on our partner to kind of guide us through. which worked out great. And they were wonderful. There's no complaints at all. It was well worth the investment. At the same time, now looking back, I think it would be even more helpful listening to different podcasts like this one right now and learning from other people's experiences. That would have been helpful, but I'm not sure if that would have made a big difference.
If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist, fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. One quick follow-up question I had for you on this point of the pre-launch. So you were talking a little bit about this idea of people being able to reserve for $25 a special offering of some kind. Can you shed some light in terms of how that worked for you? Was this something where they got just access to the early birds, or did you have a special way they could actually claim that?
Yeah, so there was a mechanism in place, and our marketing partner took care of that fully. And how that worked out is the $25 was later refunded back to the customers on their pledge.
So we talked a lot about kind of the campaign itself. We went a little bit more into you and your product. Kind of what I'd like to talk about now is just understanding when it comes to the actual project. I know you're now in Indiegogo in demand. What do you feel like worked well? Because you obviously did hit some kind of a point on its head. Like you did obviously solve a problem and people are responding to it. You talked about what you think could do better, but what do you feel like you did really well?
Picking out the right partners. We thought about it like, can we do it by ourselves? Can we put the whole launch together ourselves so we can save that X amount of dollars and just put that towards marketing? And then when you look at the small business and all the sleepless nights and all the late nights working in office and et cetera, and you think about, do I really want to do this? One, and will that be beneficial towards your goals? Because everybody has only their own certain capacity. So with that in mind, I think what has helped us a lot is having a marketing partner that put everything together and executed it step by step.
Got it. Also, looking at your campaign, I mean, you have a lot of people here, like it looks like Angelica, who's in charge of your operations. You have someone in charge of logistics, finance. How have you been able to find talented people as an entrepreneur? Is this you going out there networking? Is this you finding and reaching out to people? How do you really cultivate your team?
That's a very good question in these times. Everybody probably knows that a talent right now is very hard to come by, or it has been up to this point. It's just been interviews after interviews and going through hiring process, training, see if things work out, and then starting over. There's no easy way for that. We haven't used any recruiters so far, and all the hiring that we have done has been local in our area in Fort Myers, Florida.
Yeah, so it's all been local to your area, right? Mm-hmm. Are there any ways that you identify talent that you have, you feel?
No, I don't think there's a formula. Sometimes you think about the role that person is going to play, and you think about the first impressions that you get. There's just based on qualifications and how you feel about the person. I know it's not some magic formula that you can just go through and check mark step by step. At least I haven't found that yet.
Very cool. So, I mean, we talked a lot about your campaign. We talked a lot about some strategies that you were using. What do you feel like has been the most rewarding part of doing this and really producing a new product, getting something out there, getting people to buy it? What's been the most rewarding part for you as an entrepreneur?
It's just knowing that we're doing some good in the world and we're helping people get what they want and need. And the most rewarding is going to be when we have the product on hand and get it into people's homes and it's there and they use it and they love it. I think that's going to be the best reward that any kind of creator can ask for.
And what are some of the things that people have been saying so far? Like, I'm just going to read one. It's like, you have great customer service. People are saying that the water tastes great. The machine is easy to use. People are saying it couldn't be happier, right? Have you had any customers that stand out in your mind that said something nice about your product?
Yes. So a few years back, we had one really good customer and I'm on the phone as well when the calls come in. And so I'm pretty close to what's happening within our company, being a smaller company. The one customer that really stands out, she says, "Hey, I really love your product. I wish I found you sooner." And she said, "Well, how come you guys don't use any kind of like scary tactics, telling people, how bad their water is, that they have to have this product, and let people know that they gotta get it." And this customer, she's a doctor, retired now, so she has a lot of background and knowledge into what water is and how important it is, and et cetera, et cetera. But I said, there's a lot of companies out there that do this. But at the same time, it kind of made me think about maybe it's not scare tactics. Maybe it's more about educating why it's important. And that's always been in the back of my mind, is not try to scare people into buying your product, but do let them know why it's important to have pure water. There's a lot of things out there that people are not aware of, and they can lead to some really bad consequences. The PFAS is the latest one. It's not everywhere. It's in certain areas of the country, but it is there, and it is a carcinogen. So educating your customer as to what your product does, why it's there, that's very important. And that's always in the back of my mind, how we can do that without crossing that line, just scaring people into buying. And then you have buyer's remorse and returns and et cetera, and just having a clean conscience by running a business and having people that kind of look up to you, that work with you, alongside you, and making sure that we don't cross that line and to where it's, you need this right now, otherwise you're going to die tomorrow. So it's not, I can't do that. Our company is not.
Technically, you need water within 2
days,
right? You're going to die without thirst after 2 days, something like that. I'm not
Correct.
sure.
So you can't. I guess you can't claim that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think it says a lot about your values. So I just have one or two more questions, and then we can begin to wrap up the interview. So the first question is, I think that just listening to your story, what's really stood out to me is your ability to persist, your ability to execute, your ability to find partners, and I think most importantly, your ability to stay true to your original vision and mission. Why do you feel like so many people have ideas, but they don't actually move it along or take action on them? Why do you feel like you're different in that way?
Well, I don't feel that I'm different all the time. And if I have to think about it, it's just doing it. Sometimes you just have to do it and take the first step. That's I think that's the main point. Having ideas is great. My backlog is probably 6 months out there, so there's a lot of ideas, but not all of them get executed. Not all of them get the time to make it happen. So it's just picking out one or two, three main things, and keep the main things the main thing, and start doing it.
Well said. The other question I had is, what do you feel like is the number one thing that's holding most people back from being able to take an idea and turn that into a physical product that people are then buying, and you're building a business out of that? What do you feel like is holding most people back?
I think you kind of brought that up a little bit earlier in regards to family and friends, what they're going to say and how you're going to look when you fail, because you will fail. It's very rare when everything goes well. It's just minimizing the amount of negative impact and then maximizing the positive outcome. I know it sounds very simple, but when you're thinking about things and you're planning and, like, oh, what if it works out this way, what I can do to make sure that, that if it doesn't go well, even if it doesn't go well, that it's not as bad as it could have been. Mm-hmm. So that's the main point that I try to think about. That's minimizing the negative and maximizing the positive. It's very, very simple. And then after that, it's just doing it. And you do it and you see and you get better at it. Nobody goes into Olympic games the day when they decide to get into some sport seriously, right? There's always stages of growth. So just do one little step at a time, and then you get better at it, and then just keep building on top of it. That's all. And then what people think, it's very important. It's just having that thick skin. I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to show you what I can do. That's type of attitude that I think that I always had. That kind of that contrarian thinking or thought process.
Yeah, I love that. And I do find, at least with my own work, that the more I do execute, the more confidence I build. Awesome, man. Where can people go to learn more about your Indiegogo campaign and also about your product? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, so we are on Indiegogo, and our website is RKIN.com, and it's only 4 letters, RKIN.com. We're also taking pre-orders on our website and Indiegogo as well. I'm not really sure what would be the easiest way to let people know how to find it on Indiegogo. I guess just search for U1 Water System. And it's spelled as U and then number 1 Water System. U1 Water System on Indiegogo.
Great. And if you don't drink, you're going to die in 2 days. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
So my final question for you, and we can end on this note, is either you could end with a final quote which you like, something that a mentor has told you, just a final word of encouragement or a final tip, and we can end on that note, and I'll leave that up to you.
One of my close friends, and he's going through some problems right now. He's quite a bit older. We used to work together at the mine, and he always used to say, "Looks good, works good." That kind of translates into everything that we try to do. Make sure that stuff looks polished and looks good when people look at it. And I know different people have different tastes, but don't leave mess around your work area or whatever. So looks good, works good. That's the final quote. And I just would like to keep my memory of that person that way.
Well said. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming on the podcast. Good luck with your remaining days on Indiegogo, and look forward to your next launch.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. If you did enjoy today's episode, you found it to be useful and valuable, please take a second to leave a positive rating and review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me if you did that. It's difficult to get rating and reviews, so I really appreciate it if you leave a positive rating and review on iTunes. In addition, if you want to sink your teeth into something a little bit more meaty, you've been listening to my show a tiny bit, and you really want to just get everything delivered to you almost on a silver platter in terms of the formula that goes into launching an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter campaign, you definitely want to grab a copy of my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. So this book applies as well to Indiegogo. It goes through the ins and outs of running a successful campaign, everything that you got to do from A to Z when it comes to doing a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo campaign, that paint by numbers formula that works behind the scenes to make sure that not only do you hit your campaign, but you also blow past your fundraising goal. You're able to attract strangers, you're able to get backers, marketing techniques that you never even imagined that were possible. You can learn that and more in my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. And if you love the way in which I have passion and enthusiasm on this show, and you really want to experience that as well, I got a great Audible version for you. So you can go and check out this link at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio, crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. Just go to that link and you can learn more about this Audible version where you can begin to listen to this, download this information easily into your head while you're doing other stuff. When you're going out there, maybe you're doing some yard work, right? Or you have to, go out there during the fall, right? You're having to do some leaves. Whatever you're trying to do, you're trying to do some errands, or trying to go commute to work, or you're on a long road trip. Whatever it is, why not be learning at the same time and just letting this just sink into your brain? It's so much easier. So I do hope that you enjoyed that and also you liked today's podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman, and I will see you next time.